Oh, hey everyone, I'm Jennifer Taylor,
Hi, and I'm Briana Baker.
and our study is the positive educational effects of smartphone use. So Brianna and I figured, everyone's got a smartphone. It's hard to not have one on hand all the time. We're always constantly checking stuff. It's hard to put them down even during class when we're trying to get schoolwork done. So we wanted to explore whether or not smartphones could actually be useful for education. We figured why not implement them as a learning tool, I guess. So a lot of the previous research that we had looked at really had some negative things to say about smartphone use. A big one is obviously distractibility. There's even laws in place, don't text and drive. There's also potential addiction. If people are asked to put their cell phones away or have their phones taken away, it can even lead to depression and anxiety, which was pretty surprising. And then obviously, just with our faces kind of glued to the screen, it decreases face-to-face interaction. So studies that had been done as far as implementing smartphones in the classroom kind of had some mixed results. First, there really wasn't a whole lot of literature out there to begin with. And what we did come across kind of had mixed reviews. So some researchers felt that, yeah, these, you can maybe use your smartphones as a learning tool, but we don't really know how. And other researchers felt like, no, it's just too much of a distraction. So one theory that we came across that we felt might actually be able to kind of connect the two was elaborative learning. And elaborative learning is a cognitive learning strategy, and it basically helps when you're trying to learn like newer information, it basically connects your previous knowledge or experiences with the new material that you're trying to learn. So it kind of helps synthesize things, and it leads to better retention of the information. And there's been studies that have shown that it leads to better comprehension overall and higher test scores for students. So we figured if students were able to use their smartphones in elaborative learning ways, that maybe it could lead to better learning outcomes. So we hypothesized that if students were able to use their smartphones to do elaborative learning, specifically looking up supplemental information, that they would be able to make better connections and retain more information. So, all right, so for the methods, we did a between subjects design, and we manipulated one variable, which was whether or not students had their smartphones or were able to use their smartphones after a video lecture. And so we recruited our participants from the undergrad students at EOU who all volunteered to participate in our survey in exchange for extra credit in one of their classes. We had 32 total students volunteer, and they were given a code for our survey to take on SurveyMonkey. And they were also given a 4-digit PIN to put in. They filled out some demographic questions, and then they were instructed to watch a 13-minute video lecture, a crash course video lecture on Thomas Jefferson. After the video lecture, the participants were randomly divided into the control or experimental group. The control group was immediately instructed to take a 10-question quiz on the video lecture they just watched, and the experimental group was asked to set a 3-minute timer on their smartphone and then to use their smartphone to look up supplemental information on Thomas Jefferson, at which point, at the end of the 3 minutes, they would then take the 10-question quiz. Unfortunately, there were 7 participants. I think I mentioned we had 32 total initially, but unfortunately 7 did not take the full 13 minutes to watch the video lecture, so we were unable to use their scores in our results. We did find that the average or the majority of our participants were female, Caucasian, and seniors. and the average age of our participants was 29 years old.
Okay, so the results were, unfortunately, we didn't see much of a difference between the two groups. We were assessing if smartphones could be used in an elaborative way to enhance knowledge retention by running the two samples t-test. But contrary to our hypothesis, there was not a significant difference. If you can look at the graph here, it shows these are the scores on the left, and these are the two control groups. This is with the smartphone, so they were able to use 3 minutes before they took the test. And this is after, this is without smartphones. And so you can see that the average score was 5.9 for the students that had the smartphone, and 6 was the average score that did not have a smartphone. And so that was, you know, pretty discouraging, but we kind of came up with some ideas in our discussion that maybe could explain for it. So that we did, you know, we found that it didn't have a significant difference on memory or information retention. But we thought maybe one of the problems in just the design of the study would be it just didn't allow for complete elaborative learning, because elaborative learning states that they can use prior knowledge and make a connection, you know, and apply it to the new knowledge. Right here in our survey, you know, we just simply had them watch the video, look up, you know, extra information on it, and then take a test. So we weren't actually, you know, they weren't able to make an actual connection, you know, by themselves for it. So that might explain for part of it. Another explanation could be the limitation of a small sample size. Well, actually, let's go back to distractibility though. Another reason it could be is just smartphones could maybe not be the, you know, the right tool for elaborative learning, just because of the distractibility it holds within the phone. So the group that was watching the video and then able to use their smartphone, you know, they still could be getting distracted while doing the research. They still could have been distracted with alerts, notifications, emails coming up, or things, you know, games coming up, popping up. And then that could alter their, you know, their retention and just memory for that. And then it could also affect the group that didn't have smartphones with them, because we, you know, like we mentioned earlier, is just that anxiety of not having your phone with you. So you could be really distracted just thinking about everything that you're missing, not having your phone with you this whole survey. So you could be just skipping through it. So the anxiety of not having it. Another idea that we were thinking maybe is I'm trying to think of the word, the variability, sorry, the variability of the test scores. So it was showing that there was, you know, a big difference between it. So that could have been affecting it through the variability of the scores. So you could have a base level of, so even if you, the baseline level of learning from the video lecture could have been lower than the participants who did not have a smartphone present, going back to the anxiety and the distractibility. We also had a small sample size. So with that, you know, we had about 25 students at the end that we were going from, and that the participants were, like she said, mainly female from a liberal arts college. So maybe if we had a larger population with more diversity, with groups, ages, sex, things like that. And then we could do a wider sample of students, like elementary, middle school, high school, because we said that our average age is around 28 or so. So, you know, the younger you go, the more experience you have, and the more common it is using their smartphone. So we could do that. Another limitation would be the online platform. We weren't able to actually watch them and see if they were actually staying on task like they were supposed to, if they were reading the instructions, if they were to watch the video, if they were to use their phone, then we weren't monitoring them to see if they were what they were looking up, what they were researching, and if they used the whole 3 minutes to research. And then we were also just not able to see them perform the quiz, the post-test knowledge test, to see if they were able to, if they were actually reading the questions, paying attention to the questions, trying to answer them. So that was a limitation. Another limitation would be the use of volunteers, because all of our volunteers were doing these surveys as an exchange for extra credit. The bias might be there, and that the effort put in might not be all the way. They were just doing this, let's just try to get it done. And they had a few that they could do for extra credit. So, you had 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 that you could do. So you kind of wanted just to run through them, and didn't really matter how they scored on them, just as long as they did them. So that could be another limitation. Future research is needed on this topic to determine if smartphones can be effectively, because we also, we see that if we can do it for a broader population and other resources being put in, I think students would be able to use smartphones, and, it would be a good tool for adaptive learning. But we thought of maybe applying some kind of safeguards on the phone. So if they are using their personal phone, that it has a browser lockdown or some kind of mechanism to where they aren't able to get any kind of like notifications or text coming in, so that they were only able to use their phone on like the internet, and they were searching for what they were looking at without those distractions. So we do think that there is a possibility that it could enhance knowledge retention and enhance the learning process through smartphones, but we just think, further study would be beneficial. And these are our references.